Let's all agree that the word overrated has become overused and has made some cities just overhated. Two of my favorite cities in the world are probably the most controversial ones. So let's get into why I think they're overhated and not overrated, and why I love them. Number one is Santorini, Greece. The number one pain point people have with Santorini are the crowds. I've been to Santorini twice during high season, and the only time that I experienced crowds were in Oia during sunset, and in Fira mostly all the time. As Fira is the capital of Santorini, that makes a lot of sense to me. Any capital of any city is going to be crowded. Oia is crowded during sunset because it is famous for sunset pictures, but Oia is relatively empty throughout the rest of the day, so you can enjoy the views at any moment of the day. You don't need to necessarily watch during sunset, as you can watch the sunset somewhere else, less crowded, like all of the beautiful other villages that exist in Santorini. Yes, Santorini is not just Oia and Fira, so if you're saying that Santorini is not authentic Greece, then you have not gone outside the two major areas. Santorini has a rich culture and history that is so interesting to learn about. They have local foods and wines that are worth trying. In Santorini, it feels like people actually live there. People aren't going there just to party. And if you haven't gotten that experience, then you need to spend a little bit more time digging deeper. I think the views in Santorini are stunning, and they are unlike anywhere else in the world, and no other Greek island can compare to those specific views. And Santorini really is one of those places that look exactly like I picture it on Instagram. Number two is Paris. I'm a little biased because I was born in Paris, so I feel drawn to it. There is no place in the world that you can say looks like Paris, is like Paris. It is one of a kind. It feels like you're in an open air museum with the stunning architecture around the entire city. And I feel like a big pain point with people is that they feel like Paris is dirty, and I have never experienced that once. I guess since I live in New York City, I'm kind of accustomed to dirt, and I don't think France at all compares to the dirt in New York City. The second pain point is that people feel like the locals are rude, and unfortunately that is just cultural difference. French people, for example, find it rude when you walk into a shop and you don't say hello, so that's why you might be met with some distasteful attitude. But I just choose to shake it off. I mean, there are rude people everywhere in the world. It doesn't take away from my experience of visiting a beautiful historical city. I've also heard that people feel like there isn't anything to do in Paris, or the food is bad. And I think that just might be personal opinion, because I could spend years in Paris and never run out of things to do. There are so many museums, shops, restaurants, parks, the list goes on. And if you don't like French food, France has, and especially Paris, so many international influences, so you can find food from all around the world. I've always wondered why Paris is so divisive. People either love it or they hate it, and I think it's because people create this expectation in their mind. It's the most romantic city in the world, and it's like one of those cities where you expect it to be like the movies, like a New York City. And I personally feel like Paris is like what I see in the movies. When I'm walking down the streets, it's everything that I picture when I think about the books and poems and movies that are written about Paris. And I honestly cannot seem to understand why people don't see it that way, but everyone is different, I guess. I think you just have to think of Paris as any big city. It's going to have its negatives and positives, but you really can't argue that Paris isn't one of the best cities in the world. It has gastronomy, architecture, culture, history. Like, what more can you ask for? Basically, my point is to say that I understand that everyone has their own opinions, but I think these two cities have definitely gotten a bad rep, and too much of it, to the point that they're overhated. Let me know if there are other cities that you feel get an overhated rep as well.